This is the final video of our current unit, and we're going to now look at our course class. We're going to do something a little bit different this time around. In all the other examples, we produced the class first, and then we made up a program to test it. But we're going to do it the other way around, just to emphasize the fact that we don't need to know the implementation of the class. In fact, the class doesn't even have to exist for us to be able to go ahead and write code that uses it. So to that end, we're going to start by looking at the code that's going to use the class first, and then after we've developed it and finished it, then we'll implement the actual class. So we're going to start by doing a new Java project, and we're going to call this project course, and we'll go ahead and create it. And I'm going to add to that not the course class like we normally would start with, but instead the program to test the course class called test course. Okay, so we know what the UML diagram looks like for the class, even though we don't have an implementation for it just yet, so we can go ahead and use it on that basis. What we're going to do is then assume it exists, so we're going to assume we actually have a course class, and we're going to create an object called course1 of that class. And we'll go ahead and do it as though the class existed already. So I'm going to say course1 equals new course, and we know that there's going to be a constructor in that course that accepts as a string the name of a course that we wish to create. So let's use that and call this first course data structures. And there we go. I'm going to create another course called course2 in a similar fashion, and this course will be called database systems. And there, I've got two, oops, I gotta put strings, quotes around that, double quotes, because it is a string. There we go. So now I've got two courses created. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and enroll 3 students in course number 1. Again, we know the UML diagram, we know what it has in it, we know there will be a method that allows us to enroll students in objects of class course, and that from the UML diagram, the method is add student. In fact, it's coming up automatically in the IDE, so why don't we just go ahead and click on that. And of course, we want to add a particular student. It's a string, so we're going to go ahead and enter a string. Let's enter Peter Jones as our first student. And then I guess to save some typing, why don't we go ahead and cut and paste that, or copy and paste that a couple times, and then we'll just simply change the name, save us a little bit of typing here. We want to enroll 3 students total. We've got Peter Jones, Brian Smith, and finally Ann Kennedy. A-N-N-E, Kennedy. 2 N's. There we go. So there are 3 students enrolled in course number 1. Now in course number 2, let's go ahead and enroll 2 students. Again, I might as well cheat here a little bit and just copy and paste from above. And I want to add Peter Jones and Steve Smith. So we're going to change this to course 2 and Steve here. So Peter Jones and Steve Smith, that looks good. Now let's do a system dot out dot println to show the number of students that are enrolled in course number 1. So I'll print out a little message here, number of students in course 1, colon blank, and then we're going to append to that string when we output what we get when we call the get number of students method with our object course1. So course1 dot get number of students. And that's a method, so we've got to put a pair of empty curly braces after it. And that would be it then. So that should print the number of students enrolled in course number 1. The next thing we'll do is we'll grab all the students that are in course number 1 and then print their names. remember there's a method that returns an array of strings for us to do that. So I'm going to say string array students equals what I get when I use object one, course one, with its get students method. So I guess I can just click here on the ID and grab that in one foul swoop. And that will give me all the array of names of the students that are enrolled in course number one. Now I'm going to set up a for loop to iterate through them and print them one at a time. So for int I equals 0, while I is less than the number of students that are enrolled total in course number one, and that I can get by typing course one dot and get number of students. And then finally I'm going to bump I up by 1 between each iteration. So I is going to go from 0 to however many students are in the course less 1, and that I value is going to be used as an index to print these names. So what we're going to do in the for loop then is a system.out.print, and I won't put a print line, I'll just do a print because I'm going to print them all on one line with commas between each. So we're going to print students sub I, comma, then we're going to concatenate to that a comma and a blank, just like that. And that should take care of that. Now we're going to print just a blank line all by itself by doing a system.out.println. And why don't we go ahead and cheat here a little bit and copy and paste that in, put an LN at the end of it. And the reason I'm doing this, of course, is because we've got a comma delimited list of students and the cursor is going to be at the end of that list. I want to move it down to the beginning of the next line before I do anything else. And then what I'm going to do to finish up is just print simply the number of students in course number 2, none of their names, just to make sure that at least we can see that the right number of students, which should be 2, are enrolled in that course. So print number of students in course 2, colon, blank, and I'm going to append to that what I get when I call the method of my course 2 object, get number of students, and that's it. Now as you can see, I've got 2 errors here where I've tried to create and use the objects of course class because course class doesn't exist yet, and that's the problem. That's why these 2 lines are flagged. Apart from that, the rest of the program is perfectly fine. There's no syntax error showing anyplace else because this is the only problem, is there's no such class at this point. So let's go ahead and add that class. So we're going to do a new class and we're going to call this course. And now I will complete that missing element. So if you recall from our UML diagram, the first thing we had, there was a couple of private data members. The first was a string representing the name of the course, and we called that course name. The next private data member was an array of strings, and it represented the names of all the students currently enrolled in the course. So that was called students. And we're going to set that equal to new string 100. So we can have up to 100 students enrolled in one course. And finally, the last private data member, as per our UML diagram earlier, was an integer representing the number of students that were enrolled in the course, and we will call that number of students. And there's a little error here because I put strings instead of string for the string class. There we go, and that fixes that up. Continuing on then, we had a constructor in our UML diagram, and it was public, obviously. So public course, and it accepted a string argument, and the string argument was the course name. So here's our constructor code right here. And what we do for this is simply set this, and we talked about the this keyword many times before, so you should be familiar with now and know what that's all about. And we want to set this course name, or sorry, this course name equal to the argument that was passed to us, course name. And that's all we do there. There's our constructor. Now we had a couple of getters in the code, and we'll do them now. So the first is going to return all the students that are enrolled in a particular course. So it's going to return an array of strings, and that was the getStudents method. And all it's going to do is simply return to the caller the array students. And that's it. The next getter gets the number of students and returns it to the caller. So this is another public method returning an integer. And it's going to be called getStudents. And all it will do is return the integer data member above number of students. Now, as you can see, there's a little problem here. Duplicate method name, because this was supposed to be get number of students. So we'll fix that right now. And now we're back on track. The next getter gets the course name, so public, and this returns a string. It's called getCourseName. And all it does is return to the caller the name of the course, course name. Now we need a method to allow you to add students to the course, in other words, to enroll students. So we'll do that one now. Public void, and we'll call this add student as per our UML diagram that we saw earlier. It will accept a string argument called student, representing the name of a particular student to be added or enrolled into the course. To do that, what we would do is set our students array at index number of students equal to that particular name that we were passed as an argument, student. Now notice initially number of students, this value right here, is going to be 0. So the first student we enroll is going to be enrolled at location 0 in our array of strings. It'll be students sub 0. And that's good. And then we need to make sure we bump that counter up so that when we enroll our next student, that it is one higher in preparation for enrolling the next student by acting as the next index in the array. So I'm simply going to do a number of students plus plus to bump it up by 1. The only thing left is a method that we won't actually implement to completion here. I'm just going to put in the stub, and that's to be left as a homework exercise. But how would you go about removing a student or dropping a student from a course? And that will be something you'll figure out as a homework exercise. But let's go ahead and prepare the method for that. So we're going to drop student string student. So this will be a name of a student that you want to unenroll from the course. And I'll just mark this as homework for now, and we won't actually implement it. So we've got our test class, and we've got our actual course, and now we should be able to run it. Let's go back and look at the original code. Notice that all the errors have now disappeared and we are ready to run it. So let's go ahead and run it now. Okay, so let's see what we did and what we got as output. Well, we enrolled 3 students in the course, in course number 1, enrolled 2 students in course number 2, and then we printed the number of students in course number 1, so that should print as a 3. Let's go down and check. Number of students in course 1, 3. So that part worked. And then we printed all their names. Should be Peter Jones, Brian Smith, and Ann Kennedy. And sure enough, here they are. Peter Jones, Brian Smith, Ann Kennedy. By the way, it looks like I forgot to put the space in here. And likewise here. And then finally, we printed out that just the number of students only in course number 2. And if you count them here, there should be 2. And sure enough, we printed out a message that said number of students in course 2, 2. That then completes our implementation of our course class and our testing of our course class.